No Child Left Behind waivers is the big discussion that is occurring at this time. 33 states have approved waivers, but let's go ahead and look at this article. And I kind of want to talk about this to a lot of classes that I'm teaching because this just came out recently and it's getting kind of faster. As you know, No Child Left Behind was 2002 and it authorized for 12 years. So what that means is in 2002, in 12 years, by the year 2014, all states will have to have a 100% pass rate or proficiency on all their state tests on all their grades. If a school district does not reach a 100% proficiency rate by 2014, No Child Left Behind authorizes each school district to issue what are known as waivers, which means that you can take the money that your school district receives for your child and take that tax money in the form of a waiver and give it to another school that is passing and allow your child to go to that one. So it'd be kind of like a transfer. So for example, if I was at West Lauderdale and West Lauderdale does not make proficiency, I could take the $6,000 or $7,000 tax money and transfer it to another school district, for example Meridian High School, if they're at 100%, and then allow them to take the money. Now, many critics have argued that this would destroy education because if you're taking money away from a school district that's suffering, then that's ultimately going to hurt them in the long run. But the goal was by 2014, every student has faced the state test for every year because it's 12 years total. So students in first grade in 2002, by 2014 you're seniors. So therefore, everyone should be okay with the state test scores. Of course, as you know, no state's done 100% pass rate on any of the states, on any of the tests. So what Obama did, as we scroll down here, President Obama in 2011, now this is one thing that I may disagree with President Obama on, but I'm not the president, is when President Obama ran for office for the first term, he did announce that he would get rid of No Child Left Behind. However, when he took office, he did not get rid of No Child Left Behind. Now, many people would say, why didn't he do that? He did not do that because No Child Left Behind was a federal funded program. So instead of saying that federal program is now done and therefore shutting the door and not having that gateway into the school districts, he can keep the No Child Left Behind going and manipulate it and alter it and allow. So it's kind of like keeping the door open to the states. It makes sense that he did not get rid of it. I was discouraged that he didn't get rid of it. So I see both sides of it. But one thing he definitely did was in September of 2011, the Obama administration invited states to apply for waivers. So he said, hey y'all, if you can't make the 100% by 2014, you can apply for a waiver. And at this point, 33 states have applied for and received waivers from the 100% pass rate requirement. Mississippi is a state that received a waiver. Received one pretty fast too. So by 2011, the waivers have been signed, and they're still. I think Alabama is just getting theirs processed as well. So what this article talks about is, what does this mean? What do the waivers mean to our education, and what do we need to start watching out for? The report, it talks about the report and everything else, but it says here's what we need to watch. Nearly all the waiver states have replaced No Child Left Behind goal of 100% of students reaching the proficient level with ambitious but achievable goals. Many states have chosen the goal outlined in the waiver. Now, the waiver has a goal that they can have by reducing half the number of non-proficient students within 6 years, while others have set states. So, let's talk about the waiver. What the waiver has done is this. Instead of having a 100% pass rate, you can do the waiver that the federal government has invited people to do, and that is half the number of the students who are failing will be reduced within 6 years. So we've gone from 100% to just reduce half that are failing, while others have set state-specific goals, such as encouraging. So the goals now have shifted away from the 100%, which was firm, dead set, to let's make it easier. Many waiver states have also established a wider range of interim performance targets. So what this is saying is it's up to the states to make their decisions on what they want to do. So you could make the statement that this is now watering down the No Child Left Behind. I would agree with that. However, I would definitely make the argument that the 100% proficiency rate by 2014 was unachievable. And I just don't know of any school district that's ever had every student in every grade have 100% on their proficiency rates every year. That was way too ambitious. And possibly was just too much, way too much. So the states are creating their own achievement levels. Finally, most waiver states have replaced the either-or approach of labeling schools as making or not making AYP, which is adequate yearly progress, with complex performance indexes. So maybe No Child Left Behind has awakened our school districts to create better awareness of performance tracking. These new approaches are likely to bring some benefits. Educators will undoubtedly applaud the replacement of the 100% proficiency goal, which was widely reviewed as unrealistic, with more attainable goals. The use of a broader range of indicators could mean that judgments about school performance will be based on more finely grained data. On the other hand, the use of different goals for different subgroups in some states essentially amounts to setting lower expectations for some students, such as racial or ethnic minorities, ELL, or students with disabilities. So we're now getting away from a national standard to more of a state standard, and some of the states are actually opting to have multiple and complex performance standards, which get away from the 100% pass rate. And that's what they're saying in this section right here, that we're going to need to be careful with that, because if states are going to say, okay, we're going to create our own performance standards, and the inner city is going to have different standards than the rule, then that's going to be very controversial. They're going to say you need to watch that. Perhaps the most critical question is whether complex index systems will create an environment for subterfuge and make it easier for states to mask poor academic performance. And this is one of the big complaints that we had before No Child Left Behind. This right here is the idea that states were hiding some of their data by asking students to go into special education and therefore not be tested. Well, No Child Left Behind came out and said everyone has to be tested, including special education. So are we going back to that, where states can say it's testing time, we're going to only test the AP class, we're only going to test this class? Are they going to do that? We don't know, but we need to be aware that that may come back to that. And it continues on. It says issues to watch: treatment of student subgroups. So if every state is going to decide, okay, we're going away from the 100%, and every state can make their own performance standards and their own system, are some states going to hide questionable groups? So if you have a group of students who score lower, are you going to ask them not to take the test? And some school districts have definitely had that happen. For example, a school that falls short of just 1 point for one group for 2 consecutive years will be identified for improvement. It talks about, so how are we going to do that? The shift to super subgroups can make it easier for large, diverse schools to demonstrate progress because they will have fewer hurdles to surmount. At the same time, more schools will be held accountable for the performance of disadvantaged students. So, issues to watch: categories of schools and differentiated interventions. Rather than requiring all schools identified for improvement to undergo the same series of increasingly severe interventions, the new accountability systems in waiver states establish multiple categories of schools that will subject to different types of interventions. Now, let me explain that. When No Child Left Behind first came out, they said that the federal government said in No Child Left Behind that every state had to have a system of identification of failing schools. So Mississippi went with what's called the 5 to 1 level. So you were either a level 5 or a level 1, and level 1 means you were failing. So it's very simple to understand. Then the state said we're going to change that to ABC. And people were like, well, that's confusing. So then the state said we're going to change it to A, B, C, D, F. So we're actually going to have D and F. But with the new waiver system, states can now manipulate their own rating system so there'll be less identifiable F schools. So you could have a You could have a academic watch school, you would label it, with interventions. So it is concerning that we may be going back to the system of trying to label schools however they want to label them, and then everyone ends up not failing. So that's happened before. We always had that. So definitely something that is concerning. Waiver states do not have to select all schools that fail to make AYP, so we're getting away from that 100%, and we all saw this coming. And you kind of, as a professor, and pretty much as any kind of school teacher, everyone kind of feels like this mentality of "I told you so." So that I told you we weren't, and everyone knew that by 2014 we would never have 100% because it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible to have 100 because of this reason. No school has ever had 100% in every grade for multiple years ever. So how are we going to do that? So with the waiver system, we're seeing that we're backing off of that. But we're keeping the door open, Obama is, to continue to do stuff like Common Core. And to do so by not eliminating No Child Left Behind, Obama is still keeping the door open for federal funding and federal guidance to the program. But by getting rid of the waivers, he's definitely, he's not getting rid of the waivers, he's initiating the waivers. We all saw that was coming because we was going to have everybody was going to be failing. So that's what's going on when you hear waivers. And this article is really good about, it talks about what we need to watch. What is my prediction? I'm just a lowly man on just in Mississippi, but my prediction is No Child Left Behind will stay on the books as a federal funded program, and they're going to use it to guide Common Core. They're going to use that, but I really feel deep down that the next president in 2016 will initiate his or her own curriculum agenda, something like that. Or we may get back to a Ronald Reagan era. Well, Ronald Reagan he wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. He said that it's only the state's job. So maybe perhaps we could be going back to states controlling their own education and saying, we've got this federal government. Reagan was big on states doing it themselves, and it wasn't until Bush Sr. and then Clinton and then Bush Jr. they start coming in, and they start really this movement towards the national government directing them, moving people towards more of a federalized education system. So maybe we'll back off of that. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. Really good article, but when you hear anything about waivers, now you know what waivers are. And waivers are states asking the federal government for permission to get away from the 100% and to extend it past 6 more years where they create their own standards. So what will happen in 6 years? Nothing. It'll be gone by then. But definitely, now you know. Thank you for listening.